And welcome back to Jays in Weekly from Jays Banter. We are back for another episode, and we left you guys off last week on Thursday with some podcast questions. And today we're going to continue some, but we're not going to do it quite just yet, as it is a new episode. Alright, so in this episode we'll talk about the Jays injuries. Yes, another injury has derailed the Blue Jays. So we talk about Ken Giles going to the disabled list, a flurry of roster moves throughout this whole week, and we'll talk about the All-Star Game and what's next for the Blue Jays coming right up. Alright, let's start talking about Ken Giles and his injury report. First of all, Ken Giles went onto the IL last night, and as a corresponding move, Jordan Romano was called up from the Buffalo Bisons. Jordan Romano is a pitching prospect for the Blue Jays who was selected by the Chicago White Sox in the Rule 5 draft last December. He was then traded to the Texas Rangers, but they then released him, which the Blue Jays picked him up again. So it's kind of a warm-hearted story in terms of Jordan Romano and how he got to the big leagues. Jordan Romano is from Markham, Ontario, so he is a fellow Canadian. Jordan Romano did come up from the Buffalo Bisons, and he was the Jays' number 28 prospect when selected in the 2014 draft. However, it's been an up-and-down career for Jordan as of late, going with an ERA of 4.31 at AA New Hampshire in 25 starts last season, and currently when he was down in Buffalo this past season, he had a 6.10 ERA. But the Blue Jays brass, not wanting to lose anything this season, we're in a rebuilding season. We have to give these young players some chance. And it worked out, as last night Jordan Romano pitched a scoreless inning relief, touching 99 miles per hour with a nice fastball and a killer slider, which struck out too. So it was ultimately great to see Jordan Romano up with the big leagues, and he certainly looks like a big league pitcher. But amid all this greatness that Jordan Romano brought up, we did have some minor bad news, as you can say. So Ken Giles was placed on the IL last night with elbow inflammation, right elbow inflammation that landed him right there. Ken Giles has been a vital part to this team, and it's very suboptimal to have him on the DL close to the trade deadline, where we do fully expect him at Jays Banter, myself, and Robert, who is not here today, by the way. Robert is doing a university tour, and he will join us next week. He'll be back resuming on the Jays Banter hosting, but for now, it's just me and Mo. Mo. So, as I was saying, Ken Giles, it is suboptimal to have him land on the IL close to the trade deadline, where over here we expect him to be traded at the deadline. Personally, I feel like Ken Giles will be packaged with Marcus Stroman or Aaron Sanchez to get a better deal. San Diego appeals to me, but that is for another episode closer to the trade deadline. But for now, he was placed on the IL. The IL, not the DL. Let's not get carried away, but yes. However, some positive news out of this DL stint is that Ken Giles does expect to make full recovery in the 10 days minimum requirement, and he stated, "It is something so minor, I'm not really concerned about it," Giles said. "I anticipate just 10 days and get back on the mound and get back to helping this team." With this, the Blue Jays also transferred righty Clay Buchholz with right shoulder inflammation to the 60-day IL, and Buchholz will be eligible to be reinstated from the DL on July 8th. We haven't really seen much of Clay Buchholz this year. To be frankly honest, we haven't been seeing much of any of the Blue Jays pitchers that we acquired in the offseason. Trent Thornton is the exception, and he's been great for the Blue Jays. Trent Thornton has been a strong part of this team, and he's proven to be a mid-rotation guy who can give you quality starts day in out. He will have to adjust with the walks, but as his first year in the big leagues, he's done a fantastic job for the Blue Jays. But with the other acquisitions, Clay Buchholz, David Phelps, they have been on the IL for quite some time. David having the Tommy John surgery, and now Clay Buchholz with right shoulder inflammation. So it's kind of disappointing, but with this, there's some positives, and we saw Jordan Romano. So we'll see more young pitchers coming up for the Blue Jays. Speaking of some youngsters, we had the All-Star Game vote, the ballot come out recently, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. found himself on the All-Star Game ballot. He was among the leaders in the third base column. I believe he was 6th in the voting, the fan voting. And Blue Jays fans, what are you doing, guys? Let's go vote Vladdy into the All-Star Game. It'll be exciting to see Vladdy in the All-Star Game. He is a generational type of player for the Blue Jays, and Vladdy is just a guy where you pay to see. For the Blue Jays right now, there's not many guys where you want to pay to see. We have players like, no offense, but we have players like Brandon Drury. We have players like Teoscar Hernandez, who I will touch on later on this video. Later on this podcast, touching base on the outfield and how it's changed. But yeah, we have to vote Vladdy Jr. into the All-Star Game. It'd be great to see. Hopefully the coaches, if not the fans, vote him in. But yeah, let's do our part and let's get Vladdy into the All-Star Game. Let's turn gears now to the MLB draft, which happened last Monday. The Blue Jays had a pick 11th overall in the first round, and they picked 33rd overall in the second round. They drafted Alek Manoah out of the University of West Virginia, the first round pick. An electric pitcher. We touched base on that last podcast. Go check it out. And they struck a deal with Kendall Williams, I believe his name is, who is a 6'6" pitcher like Alek, who has electric stuff, and they both pitch with high 90 fastballs. And just recently today, the Blue Jays finalized a deal with first-rounder Manoah. He went 9-4 last year with a 2.08 ERA, and he had 108 innings under his belt. He striked out 144 batters while only walking 27, and he held opponents to a 186 average. So it was great to see the Blue Jays tying down a deal with Alek Manoah, which wasn't surprising because he was in college, and the Jays fully expected him to be called up. To be signed a deal. Kendall Williams, late last week, also signed a deal with the Blue Jays. He was a 33rd round pick, and he's coming out of high school, so it's surprising to see that Kendall signed the deal with the Blue Jays. But more young pitchers. How can we complain? Why can we complain? Among others today, the sign with the Blue Jays, we had Will Robertson, the Blue Jays' 4th round pick, 117th overall from the University of Creighton. He's an outfielder who bats left, throws left, and is 6'2", 215 pounds. Then we had Glenn Santiago from the International Baseball Academy, who's a shortstop, right-hand throw, and he's just out of high school. We had Nick Neal, 327th pick in the draft, out of Railway High School in North Carolina. We had Jack Cyril LeBron out of high school in the International Baseball Academy. And fellow Canadian, close to our home, from the University of Brock, the Blue Jays signed undrafted free agent Alex Nolan, the resident of Burlington, Ontario. Shout out to my man Alex Nolan. We don't see many pitchers from Canadian universities to make it to the big leagues, so it's always exciting to see the Blue Jays hop on this opportunity. It must be exciting for him. He's a pitcher, 6'4", 235 pounds, a very big guy. Not as big as Alek Manoah, but Alex is a senior, 23 years old, and we should see him in the minors, low minors, and hopefully he can have a successful major league career. Before we jump into the Jays in weekly and how their rough stretch, and we'll period through all the games they had, go into the minor leagues, we'll talk about a bit more roster moves. So earlier today, the Blue Jays placed Elvis Luciano on the 10-day IL with a right elbow sprain, and with this, Justin Schaefer was recalled from AAA Buffalo. Also, the Blue Jays acquired right-hand pitcher Nick Kingham from the Pittsburgh Pirates in exchange for cash considerations. With this, another disappointing pitcher this year, Ryan Cepero, was transferred to the 60-day IL. So, Nick Kingham, he is a pitcher. He was he's years off of being a top 100 pitcher and prospect for the Pirates. He's having a rough stretch this season. His numbers are not very good. I advise you not to read them, but he had a great debut, and he's been bad since. Feel like he could be a viable middle reliever, but that's his true ceiling. Nick is a guy that struggles with command, and his fastball really gets hit hard. And you really know when he's on, when his curveball is really working, kind of like all these young pitchers. But it'll be exciting to see Nick Kingham try to work his things out in the big leagues. He is 27 years old, so let's hope he can get things going right now. But he has a 9.87 ERA in 34 innings with the Pirates this season, and he's primarily been used as a starter. But in my opinion, he should be moved back into the bullpen where he can be a viable middle innings reliever. Some more minor league news for the Blue Jays. Top prospect Bo Bichette is back in AAA Buffalo after 6+ weeks and a few rehab games of broken hand. He's leading off for the Buffalo Bison's team tonight, so it'll be exciting for Bo Bichette to get things going, and hopefully he can join the squad in Kevin Biggio and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. up in the big leagues, and hopefully it'll give another reason to watch the Jays game this season. So let's hope Bo Bichette can rile things back up. He had a slow start in Buffalo, but it goes to show maybe his hand was hurting. So let's see if he can recover fully from this. Hand injuries are taken as a serious thing in baseball. Anthony Alford had a hammy injury back in 2017, I believe, and he's not been the same player ever since. Alright, so let's talk about the Blue Jays and weekly. So, the Blue Jays had a series last week, starting Tuesday, against the New York, where they won 4-3. In that game, we saw Clayton Richards start for the Blue Jays and Masahiro Tanaka starting for the Yankees. It was a surprising game as the Blue Jays were coming off of a sweep against, I believe it was let me double check. Coming off a sweep against the Colorado Rockies, so the Blue Jays were eager to get a win under their belt, and against a team where they haven't faced at home this season, the New York Yankees, who were 38-21 at that time. It was surprising to see the Jays get a much-needed victory against that club. So we saw Eric Sogard go 3 for 4 in that game. We saw Grichuk hit a home run, went 1 for 4. We saw Smoke get a hit, Guerrero get a hit, Roddy Tellez get a hit, and Galvis get a hit. The runs from the Blue Jays came from a Randall Grichuk homer, a Freddie Galvis homer, and then a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. RBI single. And that would be enough for the Jays to get that victory. The second day rolls around, and we have the Blue Jays against the New York Yankees, who we came into this game not expecting much, as we come into every single game. But the Blue Jays came into this game and had another victory, a big victory, might I say. It was an 11-7 victory for the Blue Jays, where Gaviglio got the win, Britton got the loss. It's not the first time we saw Zach Britton get the loss in the Rogers Center. And it's not the first time where it's kind of surprising to see him out there, if you know what I mean. But we saw James Paxton face the Blue Jays, who did no-hit the Blue Jays last year, so it's nice and surprising to see the Blue Jays get some runs off him, especially with the struggling offense. We saw Trent Thornton start the game, where he started really smooth. He believed he retired the first 9 batters of the game, but then he had one bad inning, but he still had a solid start, going 5 innings, giving up 4 earned runs. We had Derek Law pitch, and we had Gaviglio, as I said. The runs from the game came from plenty of runs. Randall Grichuk hit another home run. Kevin Biggio had an RBI single. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. had a single. Teoscar Hernandez had an RBI double. Vladdy Jr. hit a home run. I believe it was to dead center field. Randall Grichuk hit a home run, and then Brandon Drury hit a home run. So it was a very offense-packed game for the Blue Jays. Moving on, the series finale, the Blue Jays can't manage to sweep